نحو روسيا، الحلف الأطلسي ماشي نحو روسيا، نحو روسيا، وصول إلى البترول والغاز والفحم والحديد متاع روسيا لاحتلالها، هذه واضحة جدا. والروس متكلمين معايا على أعلى مستويات وقايلين احنا رانا عارفين هذا الهدف. قال عارفين احنا هدفهم شنو؟ هو احتلال البترول والغاز والفحم والحديد، هذه المناجم بما فيها الذهب اللي موجود في روسيا في القوقاز وما هوش موجود عندهم، عاوزين يحتلوها. والله لازم تاخذوا بالكم بجد، في عهد موجود أنا حي ولا بعدي ولا منها الكلام هذا مسجل وموجود. لا شيء حلف الأطلسي يقدر يحتل ليبيا وممكن نستشهدوا كلنا الا اذا كان في حمايه قوميه. الامه العربيه كلها عنده قوه عسكريه، الاعتداء على ليبيا اعتداء على كل العرب، الاعتداء على لبنان اعتداء على كل العرب، الاعتداء على موريتانيا اعتداء على كل العرب. ما تعملوا زي امريكا، امريكا لن تقتل في نفسها بنفسها، مبسوطين ان امريكا تذبح في نفسها. اساطيل، قواعد، مساعدات، رشوه، فلوس في كل مكان، احتكارات، واحد جري خلا تغرق. ساعه من الساعات امريكا تنهار زي ما انهار الاتحاد السوفيتي.
Así, con estas palabras, fue como Muammar Gaddafi advertía de los peligros que le esperaban a Rusia por parte de Occidente. En la actualidad, en su guerra proxy de Estados Unidos y sus colonias contra esta nación, han utilizado a Ucrania y su destrucción para llegar a ese objetivo. Sin embargo, los planes no han salido como los habían planeado. Con un número sin precedentes de sanciones contra Rusia, el efecto boomerang comienza a ser evidente principalmente en Europa y más específicamente en Alemania, lo que era conocido como el motor de Europa. A pesar de ello, el gobierno alemán ha prometido una ayuda continua de armas y dinero para Ucrania y debilitar a Rusia en el largo plazo. Las crisis sin precedentes del país garante del euro es en ciertos casos catastrófico si vemos el número de empresas que se han declarado en quiebra o que son insolventes de cubrir sus costos de operación. Aquí algunos ejemplos. Alemania fue derrotada en la Segunda Guerra Mundial, pero inmediatamente terminado el conflicto, aquella nación europea pudo recuperarse gracias a que los rusos abandonaron el país y todas sus bases militares. Sin embargo, Estados Unidos no hizo lo mismo, e hizo lo contrario al construir aún más, para tener controlado aquel país, por si algún día se le ocurriera sublevarse en contra de sus intereses. Ahora es una nación atrapada y sin salida, humillada y pisoteada con el consentimiento de sus políticos corruptos, que han entregado de lleno su futuro al tío Sam, aunque en los medios se diga que es por el bienestar del pueblo alemán.
with liberty and peace in Ukraine. And we will support Ukraine as long as it takes. Because if Putin were to win this war, what sign would that be for other dictators in the world, like Xi, like the Chinese president? So therefore, Ukraine has to win this war. Freedom and democracy have to win. And we will stand with Ukraine as long as it takes.
Germany is being systematically degraded and subjugated by the owners and controllers of global financialized capital. Now, I've been talking about this for quite some time. I was talking about this since at least the start of the war in Ukraine, if not before. Germany's leaders, who are nothing but collaborators with the owners and controllers of global financialized capital, and who act on the promise of benefit. They're hoping that they will be remembered and rewarded by the owners and controllers of global financialized capital, that they'll be rewarded for cooperating with the sabotage of their country. Now, these leaders have placed their country, have placed Germany, have placed their economy into a trap that tightens the more you struggle, until it finally chokes you to death. None of the reasons that these leaders have presented to their public as justifications for why they're doing this to Germany, none of these reasons have any substance. Whether it's because they say it's necessary, a necessary sacrifice to weaken Russia, or a necessary sacrifice for the sake of the environment and to, combat climate change, or anything like that. Whatever else they want to say as a sales pitch, none of this has any substance, and none of this has anything to do with what's really going on and with why this is happening. They say that they want to stop their dependence on Russia for energy, but they've closed all of their nuclear power plants, and they've just shifted their energy dependence to more expensive sources like the US and the Khalij. They say that they want to avoid or to eliminate carbon emissions and to promote green energy, but they are importing the dirtiest form of energy that there is, coal, to compensate for the shortages that they themselves are causing for themselves. And of course, these shortages and these increases in energy costs are wreaking catastrophic consequences on businesses in Germany, on the cost of living and the quality of life, and they're suffocating the economy. Manufacturing has been plummeting in Germany month on month for over a year now. Bankruptcies are skyrocketing. Business closures, especially for small and medium-sized businesses, are hitting record numbers. They are importing coal from Colombia, where miners are treated like animals, as disposable human beings, getting sick, getting injured, dying for the sake of Germany, or rather for the sake of the owners and controllers of global financialized capital and their profiteering from the sabotage of Germany, from the subjugation of Germany. And take note of the fact that Germany is in the process of tearing down one of their biggest wind farms, because they say that there's coal underneath that land, and they want to start mining that coal instead of relying on windmills for their energy. Now, think about that. That's going to mean that German coal miners are going to learn what it feels like to be Colombian. Because anytime the owners and controllers of global financialized capital onshore labor that they have been offshoring, when they bring back to their own countries services and labor that they have been outsourcing, they don't want to see costs increase for them. They don't want to see labor costs increase. They don't want to see a decrease in productivity. That's going to mean that they want that German mine to replicate the conditions of mines in Colombia. Trust me, in 10 years, there won't even be a Green Party in Germany. Environmental concerns won't even be mentioned in public discourse in Germany, because all this talk about the environment, all this talk about climate change, that's particularly hyperbolic in Germany, that only exists for the purposes of justifying this program of destabilization, this program of deindustrialization, this program of subjugation. Once that program has progressed sufficiently, once that program has advanced sufficiently, and Germany becomes a completely subject nation, there will be no need to talk about the environment anymore. You won't need the Green Party and the fanatical environmentalists anymore to terrify the public about climate change, to get them to accept these insane conditions that are being justified on the basis of the environment and green energy and the Green New Deal and so on. Once that program has been implemented and enforced to a sufficient degree, you won't need those justifications anymore, and they'll go away, and they'll come up with something else. They want to degrade Germany. They want to deindustrialize Germany. They want to humiliate Germany. And they're trying to see just how much the German people are willing to bear it. In my opinion, the ideal, optimal outcome of this experiment in humiliation for the owners and controllers of global financialized capital would be for the far right to come to power in Germany, and for Germany to exit the EU and to resume their ties with Russia. Then they'll be able to treat Germany as an open enemy with aggressive hostility, and potentially they could even go to war again. The New York Times just reported that Germany supposedly is considering opening secret negotiations with Russia about Ukraine. Now, whether this is true or not, the New York Times wants you to think it is true. They want you to believe that. That is implanting doubts and suspicions about Germany and about Germany's intentions and about Germany's reliability as a team player in Europe. So just watch, you're going to see more of that. The media is helping to direct the whole trajectory of this project. There are headlines proclaiming that Germany is the sick man of Europe. This is an attack on German pride. This is psychological warfare playing out in the headlines of mainstream media. Germany is the sick man of Europe for no reason. Not because it was made sick, not because it was injected with a virus that caused cascading economic collapse. And let's not mention the fact in the mainstream media, let's just avoid talking about the fact that if Germany is sick, then that means that Europe is on its deathbed. Germany is the economic heart of Europe, and if that heart stops beating, Europe dies. No matter how much America would like you to believe it, no matter how much America would like Poland to believe it about itself, Poland is not going to be able to act as a pacemaker to keep Europe alive. If EU countries are laughing at Germany now, then that laughter is just a prelude to weeping. As I've said many times, the West allowed a parallel power structure in the private sector to grow and metastasize until it surpassed and usurped and commandeered state power. And this private sector power structure is not loyal to any nation. The owners and controllers of global financialized capital are their own nation, and only the national interests of this nation matter. It's a floating empire, unfixed to any geographic borders. And they view everyone as disposable serfs and slaves, whether they live in the global north or in the global south. And they will happily cannibalize their own populations without the slightest hesitation, and that's what they're doing. You know, in some parts of Europe, in the old days, they used to actually throw old people off cliffs if they became too feeble, if they became too weak to contribute. They would throw them off of a cliff if they felt that they had become a burden or that they had become obsolete in some way. Well, that's essentially what they're doing now. They're throwing you off a cliff. Workers, small businesses, the lower class, the middle class, they're throwing you off a cliff because you have no function for them anymore. I'm telling you, there's cultural and civilizational continuity in what's happening. There's continuity in this brutal disregard for what are deemed by them to be superfluous populations. You did not maintain replacement levels, replacement rates for the workers and the consumers that are needed by the owners and controllers of global financialized capital, and so you are now disqualified from the right to a decent life. That's why I keep saying that the West never evolved. They never civilized. They're just as cruel and as ruthless as they were 2,000 years ago. They're just as barbaric. They just became more sophisticated about being primitive. Jazakumullahu khairan wa assalamu alaikum.